break from the music business, and I went to Shreveport to hang out at my friend's oyster bar for a week. Monseur's Oyster Bar. And Monseur's was about Shreveport. From that table over there wide and about 100 feet long. And on one side it had those kind of stools they used to have in the Walgreens that you couldn't pick up and hit somebody with. You know, and spun around. And on the other side there was four tops. And at 9:15 in the morning when Andy showed up there, man, there was like 15 or 20 guys standing outside. And it was right downtown, almost into the bridge downtown in Shreveport. And Andy would open the door and all these old guys would be out there, and there'd be the bankers and the lawyers and the Indian chiefs and the guys that lived under the bridge. And they were all friends for the next 15 minutes. And they knew all their name, everybody knew everybody's name, and they were pals and stuff. And any other time of the day or night, they would never have shit to do with each other. But at 9:15 in the morning, when Andy opened that place up, man, they were all best friends. So they'd all wander in behind him and stand up at the bar, and Andy would look down there and see who was there and start pulling glasses and walk down and put glasses in front of everybody. And then he'd come back with like 2 or 3 bottles and start pouring stuff as he'd go back, and he'd come back with the other way with other bottles and pour stuff. And finally at the end, he had those big old frozen schooners of Pabst Blue Ribbon beer. And I don't know if you've noticed, but everybody who becomes a real beeraholic, sooner or later ends up on PBR. And I don't know if it's because there's more formaldehyde in it or what, but that shit works, okay? Anyway, and so then he'd fill the PBR schooners up, and in 15 minutes, man, there would be nobody standing at the bar, and there'd be money all over it, because everybody knew what their booze cost. You know, they didn't have to worry about Andy. He was in the back trying to set the kitchen up. But he'd come back in 15 minutes, the place was done. All he'd do was just sweep the money off the counter and go on about his business. So I went down there and stayed for a week, and one night this guy shows up in a 442 Oldsmobile, a rag top, literally. If you put the top up, it'd look like flags. And he was a serious Cajun, coon-ass, I don't know. Anyway, he was from down around Bro Bridge, and he comes in, he says, Andy, come on, man, you got to come with me now. And he says, what? He says, man, they're going to have a crawfish boil down in Bro Bridge, and you got to go with me, because I ain't got nobody to go with me. And he says, look, man, he says, look, the whole back of my car, man, look, it's full of Coleman ice chests and beer and bottles and ice. And let's go. And he's going, I can't, man. My brother's gone. Nobody'd open up the bar in the morning for the drunks. What am I supposed to do? He says, I can't go. He goes. Then you could see the light bulb come on over Andy's head, and he says, my friend here, though, could stand a cultural experience. And it wasn't like that I was a sucker for this, because I had these two coon-ass, they were Cajun uncles, Jimmy Cuvier, and in my family, they still say, now don't be a Cuvier, But my Uncle Jimmy was the guy that took me out in the backyard in Sugarland, where he was right up against the ditch, and they would have the little chimneys that the, crawdads make, and so he took me out there one morning with some string and bacon, and I caught me some. And I was all nuts about it. So that night I was going to go out and I was going to catch me some more sun. And he says, oh no, he says, you can't go out the house. He says, you got to put your shoes on, take your flashlight. And I said, why is that? He says, well, them crawdads, when they was in there this morning, they was asleep in their houses. And you woke them up. But at night, you know what they do? And I said, no. He says, well, they come out on the grass out of them chimneys, and they go out, and what they do is they just wait, and they eat baby toes. He says, so if you go out there without your shoes, you won't lose your toe, because they pinch you home. And I was like, damn. Anyway, so it wasn't like I didn't know. And my mother had a problem with my Uncle Jimmy and my Uncle Arthur Brame, because she loved blue crabs, but she was afraid to death of them when they were alive. So they had her down at the end of the dock one day where all the crab traps were, and they both pushed her in. And she never forgave them for it, and she always told me, she goes, when they tried to get me to eat crawfish when I was little, she'd go, don't you eat those crawfish? She goes, that's just Cajun bait. So, anyway, so that's kind of where this song comes from. I went down there with this guy, woke up the next morning, there was these three huge guys and my dental work is horrible now, but they made me look like a champ. And the first one gives me a Dixie beer and he says, here, drink this. So I did, and it was good. And the next one pops a crawfish head and sticks it in my mouth and says, here, fuck this. And I did, and that was good too. Suddenly I had a whole new thing on the world there. And unfortunately, though, I hadn't taken any, that was all the wardrobe that I had. And I came back, ended up back in Shreveport 3 days later and burned my clothes and went on with my sorry life. But on the way down there, as soon as Boudreaux hit 100 miles an hour in his car, he kicks the plywood across the floorboard and takes his first beer that's empty and throws it down on the pavement as hard as he can. And it goes, and I said, what are you doing? He says, I'm just getting stuff out the evidence hole. And I said, the what? He says, the evidence hole. I said, the hell's the evidence hole? He says, well, he says, man, I don't leave no glass back there for nobody to hurt their tire. That all turned into nothing. He says, and so what you do is when the cops pull you over down here, and they will, he says, what you do is you stomp on your brakes when you get over on the edge, and the cop come right up on you, right? And so while he's walking up to the car all mad and stuff, you're putting things down the evidence hole. So this is the guy that I got in the car with. Went back 3 days later, burned my clothes, went on with my sorry life, and it was all good. So anyway, here.
And them Creole girls don't hesitate. yourself. And when the sun come up and the rooster crows, well, his daddy's sleeping in the old Bayou. Some things like you ain't never seen, and the squeeze box player, he's a cool-ass dream. And when the fiddle player sings in that old club, well, they're written on down about where you are. You just something hand going over yonder on the decks of the now too far about it. That roam, just shut back ahead, going over yonder down the decks of the now too far about it. Talk and talk, and chat till, sip your whiskey and shut yourself. Now when the sun goes down and the bullfrogs sing, well, the crawdaddy's roaming where the gators can. Thank you. I'm Tommy. This is Larry. That's Kim over yonder. And that's Trent. And that's Brad. He makes us sound like we're $1,000,000 fucking bucks. So, anyway, nice chatting with y'all. Have a great life. Don't fuck it up. Thank you.